Asteroid of fear.
This is Amber McCrae with Connection Over Perfection. I'm also part of the Podcast Connection Network. Check out my show and other shows like the one you're about to listen to. The link is in the episode description.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. On today's episode, we have John Graham, and we're going to talk about chronic anxiety and how to leverage panic attacks for good. We're going to talk a little bit about his chaos method, which is that idea of making training harder than the actual fight. And you often hear that, especially as it refers to war fighters. You know, you want to train harder than you fight. You want to train hard so you want to bleed in training so you're not bleeding in battle. But how are you doing today, John?
I'm awesome. I just had the birth of my third daughter a
Awesome.
week ago. So yeah, I'm trying to get sleep, but enjoying life.
I have 3 daughters as well,
Really?
21, 20, and 10.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so
So
all
cool.
girls.
All girls, same here. We got something in common already. That's cool.
Yeah, I love it. How about you?
Yeah, just the three. Yeah, 4, 2, and just born. So fresh
Ooh.
into it. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely need that sleep.
Yeah.
100%. But, they grow up so fast, and sometimes it seems like yesterday they were so little, and now all of a sudden it's summertime, and I got one going into the 5th grade, and the other ones have graduated and continuing on with their lives, and it's just a wild ride, and time flies by so fast.
I know. I get
But
reminded of that all the time. So it helps me stay present and locked into the moment
yeah, it
more.
seems like the older we get, the faster it goes.
It does. It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Einstein wasn't joking with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I too just try to enjoy each day, kind of live it to the fullest. But let's start off by giving the audience a little bit about your background and kind of how you arrived in this space around anxiety, leveraging panic attacks, and how this kind of became your thing and put us in front of each other to have this discussion for the audience.
Yeah. Well, I came at it because I suffered from anxiety and panic,
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't read it in a book. I didn't, learn it in school. I lived it. About 10 years ago, I came across a book that changed my life. It started me on the memory journey because I'm a 3-time U.S. memory champion.
Oh,
So I
cool.
read this. It showed how ordinary people can use their minds. Like if you know what your mind wants, you can memorize massive amounts of information, using visualization, imagination, connection, story, places. Like if you follow a structure and a creative flow, you can really memorize hundreds of digits in minutes and decks of cards in seconds. Like it's crazy. And I went that route and I started competing all over the world. And I learned very quickly that despite knowing the techniques and doing well at home with them, the psychological pressure of performing on the spot was insane. And I almost got up and left a few times. And that was early signs of anxiety, right? Just the voice in my head, the heart palpitations, the tightening of the chest, the worry of the future and the worst case scenarios and all of that. And it just developed over the years. I eventually became a memory coach. And then I transitioned into helping people with flow and performance. And I'll be honest, helping people with that, I actually started to struggle more. And here I am a coach, like helping people with this. And I was struggling, like the anxiety started going up. And like, I can't be a coach of helping people with overwhelming anxiety if I'm getting worse. And it got worse and worse and worse because I'm teaching people all these mental techniques. The mainstream, like take, supplements, block out your distractions, have a to-do list, be organized. I'm even teaching like guided meditations, all the mainstream, like therapy, reframes, all this mental stuff. And for me, it was getting worse and worse and worse. Like there was some benefit to it, but it wasn't getting to the root, the core. I was even trying medication, and I didn't want to go that route.
Yeah.
So I learned in that it developed into daily multiple panic attacks. Like every day I was having multiple panic attacks. It was horrendous. I mean, if you've never had a panic attack, you feel like you're going to die. Like the voltage in you, like your chest is tightening up, your arms tightening up. You think you're having a heart attack. You literally feel like you're going to drop dead and die. Like something
I
is
feel
wrong.
it just describing it because I've had
Yeah.
one and it's like, ooh.
Yeah, it's like a sense of impending doom. Like you feel like something really bad is going to happen and you don't know what. It's awful. And I was having multiple a day, right? And so at that point, I liken it to everyone can imagine like having a heart attack. And if you had a heart attack, from that day on, if you survived it, you would radically change your life. You would say, I'm eating better, I'm walking, I'm exercising. I'm like, I'm going to cut all the crap from my life. That's your moment of the wall, right? I had my moment with panic attacks of the wall. Like I got so far, hit rock bottom, the worst day of my life. I felt so helpless that I had to change. And at that realization, I let go of all the mental stuff and I realized, and there were some voices, some support and guidance along the way, who like mentors who showed up at the right time, but indicating that this was an emotional root issue. Anxiety, panic, overwhelm is an emotional root issue. So if you treat it at the root, the emotion, and not through the mind, you can actually resolve it and release it for good, like forever. And within a couple of months, I wasn't having any panic, any anxiety after having like on and off for years. I'm not talking like take a test anxiety, because that's
Right.
a thing. I'm talking about like waking up with dread and like overthinking and your head's hot and you're overwhelmed, right? I didn't have any of that and I haven't had it since. Like it's completely gone. And so now, having been through that, this is what I teach people, because I'm like shouting from the rooftops. This is not a mental root issue. This is emotional. And here's what to do.
How did you get into the memory thing, and how does one figure out that this is a talent? Because we're talking about mind body kind of connection, and this is the route you started. How did you get into that? How did you know that was kind of a gift of yours?
Yeah, well, it wasn't actually a gift because I'm not born with a photographic memory or anything like that. The book, Moonwalking with Einstein, the subtitle is The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. And it just captured my soul. Like I was a very like smart guy, but I was fascinated with the mind, the brain, you know.
Hmm.
The person 10 years ago wanted everything about the mind, wanted to optimize my mind, wanted to like, you know, hyper focus and flow and learn everything and cram everything and like
Yeah.
excel. And yeah, so I just took that book and I was skeptical at first because it talked about how ordinary people could use these visualization creative techniques to remember. But within a week, I learned how to memorize a deck of cards. And I sat down at the end of the week and looked at a deck of cards and memorized it all in 6 minutes, like 52 cards in order. That's when I knew it was real. And actually, I kept training with numbers, cards, names, words. Later that year, my wife and I had sold everything we owned and we were backpacking through Southeast Asia. So this is a radical life change, right? Learning memory, traveling the world. We're in China or in Southeast Asia. I learned the World Memory Championships are in China. So I signed up. Like I was just like, I want to go. I want to get a nice certificate, you know, like show everyone I won an
Yeah.
award, like, and be like this cool guy. And that was it. Like that was my goal. And I went at it and I completely bombed. And that was a psychological thing. That was the day that I sat down and I felt immense pressure like I'd never felt before in my life, like anxiety up the wazoo, you know, from trying to perform at my best. And I completely bombed and went through that trial, but I kept going and I learned from the best in the world. And that's what that pursuit of getting myself better. You know, I love that pursuit of
Hmm.
looking at my scores and getting better. That's what I just kept at it and became a 3-time US champion over time.
So where does this curiosity stem from in wanting to always kind of improve your mind? Because I can remember myself as a child. I'm 47, long time ago, 25, 30 years ago. I can remember, hearing little things like, oh, we only use like 10% of our brain, and kind of looking at, I used to have this book called, I think it was like the Big Book of Brain, and
Mhm.
talked about many different things. And I've read, I think it's Flow State.
Mhm.
I've had to read that in a class, like a psychology class. And so where did that fascination kind of come from, this always wanting to improve your mind or kind of get more out of it?
Yeah, I mean, the two things come to mind. One, I wanted to be somebody,
That
right? I
helps.
wanted to find my thing and like impress people, you know, that's the
Hmm.
ego, like wanting to just be acknowledged and appreciated for something really cool, a talent. But I always knew in the depths of my soul that there was more to this world and universe than mainstream talked about. I knew like people could achieve insane things. All like, you know, back when I was a kid, there wasn't the internet like this
Right.
where you could find everything. And I just knew there was more to this thing than what everyone going to jobs and everyone like whatever, this normal route. I was like, and that yearning just, you know, the soul just like craves those things. And for me, it was the mind, the brain. That was my avenue because I thought the mind was like the final frontier. Like it was like the biggest thing. If I could master my mind, I could do anything. You know, at the time, that's what I believed. I don't believe that now, but that's what started me is like the excitement. Like you and I talked right before the recording of listening to that voice, that inner voice. And I love that you said that because there's inner voice of the mind, of the ego. Like I said, I wanted appreciation. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted to be have status. That's my ego mind wanting, ooh, I need to be somebody.
Right.
But then my soul, which is what you really want to listen to, is speaking to you, nudging you all the time. And the soul doesn't really speak as a voice. The soul speaks as excitement. That excites me. That's how you know you're on a path. Your path is what excites you, you know? And so I followed my excitement of this book, of this memory technique of competing. And I just went with it and I just kept going because it was the thing that when I woke up in the morning, I wanted to learn more and do more. It was very simple. And that was the thing for me.
Now, have you pursued any sort of formal education outside of like high school that related to psychology or anything like that?
It's all
Okay.
just self-taught and self-learned. Yeah.
Kind of that desire has propelled you.
I mean, I've met a lot of the top experts in the mind and the brain over the years. I've
Mhm.
befriended them, right? So I have that, but it's all mostly through practice and yeah, competitions, TV shows, things like that I've learned.
Now, did you ever have any other intentions in terms of you want to explore the mind, you want to see what the mind's capable of, and you pick up this book and you're able to learn all these incredible things, as opposed to just, let's say, learning or memorizing some stuff like that for memory? Have you ever looked, were you ever curious? Did you ever explore the mind in relation to, like, let's say, visualization and manifestation, I guess you could call it, or attracting certain things into your life, whether it be behaviors or outcomes?
Yeah, my first championship, you see if you're watching the video, you see the trophies behind me,
Mhm.
right? The seahorse, that's the US championship trophy. Back in 2014, when I was traveling the world, I started intuitively like putting on headset of my favorite song and imagining I'm on stage, imagining I'm winning an award, imagining I'm at the top over and over and over, like day after day, night after night. It got to the point where it was so detailed that I visualized the championship event, the first event succeeding the second event, the third event, the fourth event, like clockwork. Every night I was visualizing that day of winning that first championship over and over to the point of like tears, where I was adding emotion to it, not just like seeing it, not just like vision boarding it, but like feeling it. That was the
Right.
biggest thing, like feeling the emotion, the excitement of winning. And the day that I won my first championship, like I'm on stage, I'm at MIT, I won. I actually had to like pinch myself because I was like, is this the real one? Because it felt normal. And I share that all the time. Like I've lived it so many times in my mind that when I actually won it, I wasn't like super pumped like you would think.
Right.
It felt normal. Like, sure, I was excited, but I believe in manifestation. You know, we're manifesting all the time based on who we are and the things, you know, we'll talk about this more in depth. There's manifesting through the mind, the ego, which I want that trophy. I was manifesting through my mind. I desire this trophy. I want that for my soul, for me, right? For me. That's what I want. Like, same thing with money, with house, all that stuff. You can manifest from your mind, your human mind, but there's a deeper manifestation of manifesting from your heart, not your wounded heart, but your soul, right? And that's a different type of manifestation. That's a manifestation that people don't want to talk about because that's more of a letting go and going with the flow of life, because the flow of life will give you the most magic possible, more give you everything you need, like faster. So that's where I'm at now, is that type of manifestation. But I know that the manifestation of the mind works. I know that feeling. I called it at the time emotionalization. I don't teach it anymore because I think it's overrated, to be honest.
Right.
Like, here I am. I'm sharing I won a trophy that way in a championship, but I don't practice anymore because those things never fulfilled me.
It's funny. Well, interesting. There was a couple of points in the conversation where you had talked about the mind and you were like, if I could get control of the mind, I could use my mind to do these things. And I don't quite believe that anymore as much. That's not your first prescribed method.
Mhm.
And then you talk about kind of this body, this soul,
Mhm.
which is more kind of like a feeling. And then we talked about ego, brain, guiding, and then kind of soul, the purity of a guidance
Mhm.
towards something. And it makes me think about, I had this discussion about like your microbiome and somebody saying that, for every one signal your brain sends your stomach sends seven back to the brain. And so it kind of made me think of tying in that feeling of when you
Mhm.
feel something you want or a manifestation, the difference between the brain and the body and that feeling. I'm a little bit curious, at what point did those switch for you? Thinking that the brain was kind of the main way, and that kind of putting that on the back burner a little bit and moving into something a little different? Where did your mind change?
Yeah, it was that panic attack moment where I had always thought I'm just going to manifest my life and my dreams. At the time, I was building a business. I kept wanting the house and, tens of thousands of dollars a month, and I was
Security.
building and getting there. Yeah, I wanted all that stuff. And it was actually increasing my suffering of anxiety and the pressure, the resistance. And it got to the point of daily multiple panic attacks. And that was the point I realized that I was resisting life. Panic and anxiety is you don't trust the flow of life. That's at the core. You don't. You're resisting God and the universe. That's what the resistance is, because everything is happening to you for a reason. Like everything. I didn't know that at the time. People who are having anxiety and panic probably don't see that way, but I believe that. Like panic and anxiety was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was the point I realized that I was operating from my mind and all the conditioning I had, because at any given point, we are limited with our conditioning. I have a conditioning, a static around me, a mental framework right now that's limiting my growth. You do too. Everyone listening has that. That's not an arguable thing. We all have this ego, this limitation. It's the mind. Our mind is in that cage. We see things through a perception of duality, right? Well, when you follow that, you're following all of your desires from a place of I'm not okay. Like, why do I need a trophy and money? Because I'm not okay on the inside. I need that stuff to make me feel happy, but it doesn't. I realized it doesn't make you happy. It doesn't keep you happy. Like I won that third trophy back there last year. It was an amazing feeling. But then at the end of the night, I'm getting ready for bed, got my pajamas on, and I put that trophy on the mantle, and I felt a little empty. I wanted another one. Your ego always wants more money, more trophies, more love, more, love from other person, more sex, more rock and roll, whatever. And it never ends. And I realized that. I was like, this isn't it. Why do I always need something to feel happy? And why isn't that method ever working? And then from that question is where Michael Singer, the author, came into play. The right teacher shows up at the right moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained why you're not okay, why we're not okay, why we need these things, and why manifesting from the mind is overrated and getting what you want is overrated. He said that I was like, whoa, and I went down that route instead and learned that we are blocked with suppressed emotions. And this is the emotional root issue I talk about, with panic and anxiety. This is the real root issue, is over our lifetime, we have suppressed massive amounts of emotion. Basically any moment in our life that we pushed away, that we couldn't handle, right? It was so intense. Embarrassment, someone looked at you funny, you were scolded, whatever, heartbreak, betrayal, any uncomfortable moment of your life that you pushed away, that you distracted yourself from, is still inside of you today. And so that bottles up and that stacks up. It causes all kinds of, we know stress causes ulcers. Stress causes so many diseases. Stress causes anxiety, but what is stress? It's our reaction to all this suppressed emotion inside of us. So I learned we're blocked. The way to happiness is realizing there's a spring inside of you that's always happy, a spring of energy, of life force, but it's blocked. So now I'm releasing and removing these suppressed emotions to feel happy and at peace despite whatever the world brings me. And it's working.
So I imagine, because you said you were kind of hiking, backpacking, traveling, I could imagine how going through that period in your life, that experience probably was great for thinking, processing the information, and kind of trying to get on with it. Now, when the right teacher came along, did he give you tips and techniques to do this, or was it something you had to learn? But how did you make that switch between mind and body and that proverbial let go, so that energy stopped stacking and stopped holding and finally started flowing?
That's the thing, is we all know to let go, we all hear about it, but we don't know how to do it, and that's what I teach now people. But he taught me, because if you've ever read the book Untethered Soul, it's a great book. It talks about the voice in your head. He talks about this voice in your head, the ego, right? And listening to it and be like, it's neurotic, right? And it's not you. It is not you. You're the awareness behind that voice. You're always looking at that voice and those thoughts, but you are not those things, if that makes sense. You are aware that you're aware. You're back here looking at your thoughts, looking at your life, looking at the inputs of right? So you are not the voice in your head. And that brings great relief to people to realize they am not those things. I can see them, I can witness them, but they're not me. They're a construct. That was the first thing he taught me. The second thing is the deeper, the how to let go of these trapped emotions, which I go into great detail with my clients. Is everyone wants to know, where are these suppressed emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're showing up all the time. Any time you're bothered by something, little, big, there's a portal. It means something's coming up like this, like literally something's arising inside of you, a feeling. You can label it anxiety, frustration, sadness, whatever, isolation, pain, loneliness. Something's coming up. And what do we all do when that happens? We avoid it. We go watch a Netflix show, we go for a walk, we get a drink, we go work out, we watch a podcast, we meditate. Like all this stuff is bypassing. We're keeping this stuff down. Like think of like alcohol. We drink, or I don't really drink, but drinks are to take off the edge.
Right.
What's the edge? The edge is the stuff that's coming up, the emotion. So like every time we go meditate when we're feeling anxiety, we are taking off the edge. We are pushing it back down. It's not that it's going away. You think it goes away because it's not there, but it's masked and it's suppressed again. So, like I said, anytime something bothers you, it comes up instead of escaping it or trying to feel better. And this is really controversial. Like, don't try to feel better in that moment. That's what everyone tells you to do. Everyone tells you to calm down, go feel better, go do something that makes you feel good, go dance, go shake it off. No. If you want to keep it and kick the can down the road, sure. But I faced everything. Like I let it wash over me, because here's the thing, Richard, it's like, this is intelligence that's coming up. When you realize this is your parts of your soul that you have fragmented off, this has intelligence for you. This is your suppressed potential. This is what I teach people. This, if you can let this stuff wash over you, crack it open inside of you, wash over you, it informs your DNA, it informs your body, your nervous system. It informs your soul, and you expand. Now you can overcome the procrastinations, the anxieties, the self-sabotaging behaviors that inhibit you from taking that next step. You don't do that through the mind, through forcing yourself to, oh, I need to work. Just get up and beat this procrastination. Just go get motivated. No, that's limited. Like release the stuff that's holding you in, that informs you of why you're procrastinating, the deeper core reason, so that you can overcome it instead of always suppressing it or like trying to pump yourself up to perform. And so I faced everything, which is not taught. Therapy doesn't really teach that. Mainstream doesn't teach that. Meditation, certainly, I shouldn't say that. Meditation is so general, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I went at it.
It's kind of the first time I've heard it, but it was that analogy very interesting of, I'm editing an episode where we talk about being alcohol free, and because I'm coming up on a year, and this podcast I had heard, this gentleman said alcohol wasn't my problem. The problem was alcohol was always the solution.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Cool. Yeah.
I was mad, whatever. And when you made that statement about taking alcohol to take the edge off, because said that in that conversation is, hey, you get in a fight with your wife, you have a hard day at work, maybe you didn't perform as well at the Memory Champions. What's the easy thing? Is to take that drink, take the edge off. It was just so interesting because that was the first time I had ever correlated and put together even exercise, meditation, and stuff like that. And, I don't want listeners to be confused and to think like what you said is there's no benefit to it,
Right.
because I exercise, but
Right.
making that,
It's just,
connection.
in that moment of suffering,
Yeah.
use those things to pump yourself up. Like you have a choice. You can keep pushing it down. Like there's nothing wrong with working out and meditating, right? But
Right.
in that moment of suffering, don't escape that. That's the juice. That's what you want. That's what you want.
And see, I do that. And I notice sometimes, like, especially in the beginning of abstaining from alcohol, I would get real anxious. And
Yeah.
and part of that thing is, okay, I'd go walk 4 miles. Sometimes I would do it twice a day because I just couldn't stand to be in my own body. But there was a point, I'm not 100% cured of it and better, but I have gotten better with, I talk about all the time, you have to sit in the discomfort.
Yeah.
You have to feel it. You have to try to make yourself aware of what it is you're actually feeling and be able to describe it and name it. Because I think a lot of times we can get so general with our emotions. I just feel meh, I feel blah, or I don't feel well, but we're not actually attaching maybe the proper emotion to what it is so we can understand it and perhaps actually deal with it.
Yeah.
But, I've gotten a lot better with it, but that was definitely an interesting point to me to think about, hey, because I'm a huge avoider. That's one of my biggest things is put it to the back, put it to the back. And, I worked in level 1 trauma for 6 years and seeing a lot of trauma. It was very similar in avoidance is you're putting the book on the bookshelf, but guess what? When I got laid off and all these things happen, and now all of a sudden I'm sitting still, now I got a shelf full of books to read. And they hit you, like the caboose that continues going through the front of the train because the train stopped. So yeah, I feel like I've already learned so much just in this
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. I mean, all of that is emotional root issue, avoidance, any type of you like, think about this alcohol, right?
Mhm.
Even like that, the energy that arises. Same thing with porn. We're talking to men here, right?
Right.
Surge of energy the way I need to release this. It's so intense, right? Workaholic. That was me. Like productivity, always doing something. That's a cope. Masking, all this stuff. Like you said, when you sit still, you feel it. It all comes to the surface. So all of these things, because we all know we should eat well. We all know we should exercise. We all know we shouldn't watch porn. We all know all this stuff, but why don't we do it? We're not going to hack our way through our mind that way. It's an emotional root issue. If we address and sit with that uncomfortable emotion, it will inform our being of why we're doing this, where this root is, and now we can make a better choice with that clarity, right? So we can brute force stopping drinking or stopping porn or whatever, but then
Comes
we can
back.
never do it, it never sustains because we can't handle that voltage, that energy but if you can sit with yourself and let that stuff wash over you and allow it. And I know it sounds crazy, but when you feel an emotion, a suppressed emotion, and let it experience in your being, it will process out and release forever. It's not going to keep coming back. The reason it keeps coming back is because we keep pushing off the edge. And so I was devoted to this practice of being with it, because it's funny, like you said, when you sit still, it all comes up. Our greatest punishment in this country is solitary confinement. Literally, having someone sit in a room by themselves is the most aggravating thing possible. Why? Why do yogis love that? Yogis will go sit forever in a cave by themselves and they feel bliss. But because we have so much suppressed emotion that's unresolved, it haunts us. It comes up and it's the energy, that life force that voltage is so intense. We don't know, like we go crazy, psychotic, neurotic, because we can't handle it. And so let's process that stuff out so that sitting still doesn't bother us. We can be with ourselves.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting fact. That is true. We do isolate them and we consider it kind of inhumane, yet we still do it. But then again, you take somebody who has a criminal past like that, there's definitely associated trauma and more than likely a bunch of things that they've never dealt with. But then I guess, maybe a question for the justice system would be for how long to isolate? What's the appropriate amount of time to
Yeah.
sit
I
with
mean, I don't,
something?
condone like putting people in rooms, but I'm saying like, yeah, like for
Yeah.
you, if everyone here is listening and be like, I don't have suppressed emotions, like I don't have trauma, because I didn't like that word either, trauma, because I didn't have a traumatic background. I didn't have like a abusive relationship with family. Like I had a loving family, but I still had panic attacks, anxiety. I still had stuff inside of me. I challenge anyone here. Can you sit still with no stimulus for an hour or two? Like if you think you're good, no suppressed emotions, if you can sit for an hour or two, stuff will come up. Stuff will come up. You will feel something inside of you. It's knocking on the door. And again, even make a list of everything that bothers you. That will prove to you that you've got a lot of stuff in there. That was my like Wizard of Oz moment that I give people all the time, my clients, where it's like they're living in black and white, in the Wizard of Oz, and then she steps out the door in this vivid color, right? If you like write down everything that bothers you, that's your reality, or taking the red pill in the Matrix. That's when you wake up and realize, oh my gosh, I have so much inside of me that's blocking me from feeling happy.
So after you're traveling, you do the competition, you don't perform like you want, your teacher shows up, you get this new information. Where do you go from here? Where does your journey kind of go? Because I know you have this memory thing that you do, but then at what point do you start to understand enough and say, I want to help other people, or these techniques that I'm using to do this can actually also be used to help people?
Yeah. Well, I took a break from coaching people in the program that I had, because I was teaching people manifestation or
Hmm.
emotionalization. I was teaching people some mind hacks for productivity, right? Performance. There's nothing wrong with those things, by the way.
It's
But
like discipline. It's a tool,
it's a tool.
but white knuckling it or disciplining your way through everything, I don't know is
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah. And during that break, I took the time. That was when I had fully overcome the panic and anxiety. So I was in the midst of really realizing what just happened, because it was so profound for me. I mean, not just ending anxiety and panic and having a peace, but all this new energy was surging through me, and I could hold more energy inside me. Like, I call it life force. People call it God, whatever you want to call it, chi, kundalini,
Hmm.
spirit. More was flowing through me. I could feel it. I could feel my body vibrating, which is insane. I know I don't share that much with people, but like I can still feel it right now. If I sit still, I can feel the tingle vibration of pulsing through my body. And I never felt that before because my heart was blocked. When you're in anxiety, your heart's walled off. And now we're getting into some spiritual stuff here, but like, you literally put up barriers to protect your heart. Because again, it's an emotional root issue. The reason you're always worried and thinking ahead and future is because you're trying to protect yourself from feeling awful. You're trying to change your schedule and think ahead and plan everything out and plan for worst case, because you're afraid of the feeling inside you will get if someone is disappointed in you, or you get embarrassed, or whatever, you mess up on a test or a speech, or you flub. You're afraid of the feeling, and that's why we wall our heart off and we avoid. Like, you talked about avoidance. I love that you were so honest, because I was too. Like, we avoid doing things like taking action on our dreams, that next step, because we're afraid of the feeling of being poked in the heart and that awful anxiety, disappointment, failure to wash over us. We don't want to feel that. So then, right? So I had walled off my heart and I was living in my head. So I had to really process what happened, why I was feeling all this energy, why I was feeling so good, and start incorporating that and teaching people, right? Because I had to put it into a process that was super simple. And I share this too, a process where you don't use your mind, because it's not a mental process to release anxiety and panic. You can do all those things, but you're never going to get to the root of it. Like, you can't process emotions through your mind. And I'll give you an example. You mentioned this earlier about like identifying what emotion it was.
Hmm.
And I used to teach that too, like sitting, oh, this is anger, oh, this is overwhelm, this is irritation. That's all good. Like, you can do that. But that's also through the mind. Your mind is labeling an energy,
Mm.
right? All it is energy. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's energy. It's intelligence. That's the thing. It's intelligence. It's not bad. The mind sees things as good and bad. That's why we push it away. And so when you're feeling something, all we need to do, and I'm giving you the secret, it's not easy to do, but you just need to feel it and allow it to happen. Like, 100% allow it to happen. The problem is, when people try this, like people listening to this podcast will go, okay, that's simple, I'll try this. And later today, they'll try it, but their mind will get in the way and they won't know how. Their mind will be like, am I doing this right? Wait, what do I have to do again? Wait, how long is this going to last? Am I doing, like, do I have more stuff? How much stuff's in there? I got stuff to do. I can't be doing this. Like, how do I know it's working? I don't feel anything. Like, your mind will go neurotic and like convince you that this is pointless. So again, we have to stay out of that mind, because it's going to convince you, right, to take the drink, to watch the porn, to stop meditating, to stop feeling the emotion. Because it's not a bad thing. Your mind is just keeping you safe in your construct of what's comfortable and what's familiar to you. It's keeping you in familiar territory, right? So that's the biggest hurdle I have to coach people through, is how to stay out of their mind and figuring things out, and just drop in and feel that intense intelligence wash over them.
Man, that is deep, thought-provoking in a way, especially, because I had told you how interested I was in the mind, and there's all these things that we hear about unlocked potential of the mind, and especially now with a supersurgence of psychedelics and whatnot coming into the mainstream as therapies and whatnot. And so this unexplored part of the mind, and sitting here trying to link it to body, ultimately trying to think of how it becomes one, how you let go of this part.
Mhm.
It's
Let
a
me take
large
the stage
concept
there.
to.
Yeah, first it's like, it's a complete, like you said, it's a complete flip of reality. Like, oh my gosh, like, I thought the mind was everything. I thought accessing this through the subconscious, and I get that. But the mind, everyone tries to, like, in meditation and all this stuff, they try to calm the mind
Mhm.
or block out stuff, right? And they're using force, they're using control, they're trying to play God with their mind, right? And they're
Right.
like pushing things away that I don't want, reframing stuff that I don't like, trying to feel grateful here, trying to whatever, all that creates resistance. Your mind, it's the same thing with your emotions. You just need to let it be. And that's so hard for people because it's neurotic and it will go crazy and like, oh my gosh, I'll get lost in my mind, right? But you're already lost in your mind. It's because you're identifying, you think you are your mind and you're listening to every single thing it tells you and the impulses. And so part of that is just letting it be. And that's so hard because we
Yeah.
always feel like we got to do something. We got to figure something out. We got to utilize. And I was addicted. We are all addicted to our minds, like obsessed with our minds. Like
So
everything it thinks and wants to do, we are obsessed with it. And that's not a bad thing, but it's an overdominance. And I had to learn how to let go of that obsession with my mind and always wanting to control things and plan things and figure things out. Because you can do that. It takes a lot of energy though. And you're fighting and you're resisting reality a lot of the time too. Just like you let emotions wash over you, you let your mind wash over you too.
I started in the mornings where I would try to sit for 5 minutes, like wake up, drink my water or whatever. I would go for 10 minutes. You can call it meditation, but it was really just a matter of changing routine, just trying to sit still for 5 minutes. No sound, no anything, just here in the office, but with some red light or something. It is hard to just be. Your brain wants to do all these things. And of course, if I just woke up and I'm a little congested. I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I can't just be because I go, I'm sitting here going, my nose is stuffy. That's all I can think about. I can't either clear my mind. I can't, and I don't even know what the point is other than to try to be still, to try to not necessarily think of anything, to just allow it to flow and be and go wherever it goes without attempting to control it was kind of the goal.
I mean, that's where people get frustrated with meditation is they don't understand the goal. And there really isn't a goal other than awareness. Like I said earlier, you are not your mind. So if you do this enough, you'll start watching your thought. And if you can watch your thoughts, that means you are not those things. Like I'm watching you. I
Hmm.
see a light, I see a room, I see all this stuff. That's not me. I'm observing it. Same thing with your thoughts in your mind. You're watching it all the time. It's just the problem is people believe they are like, this is my mind and this is your awareness. We're like, I am my thoughts. I am John Graham. I am all the impulses and desires. And it's like, no, you are this awareness behind it. And when you have that moment, like more and more, you start living your life where you're in the seat of awareness, meaning you're not your mind, you're watching everything unfold like an observer, not through force, but just like you're like leaning back and seeing life unfold without this. Like you see the mind, you see John Graham going crazy.
Hmm.
This is uncomfortable. This person's coming up to me on a walk and I don't want to talk to them. I hope they don't say anything. You're watching this neurotic conversation in your mind, but it's not you. It's a profound realization that you are not your mind. And then that goes down the rabbit hole of, okay, who am I? But that's another conversation for another day. But
So whenever you did this, took a step back, you release. Now, do you go back into doing memory championships or strictly coaching? And how did that making those connections and finally learning to release, what did it improve? How did it improve it?
yeah, I actually just retired from memory competitions a couple days ago.
Oh, cool.
I begin a
Congrats.
new chapter in my life. Yeah, I'm going out on top. My interest and my excitement, you talk about the soul, has dwindled with memory. I feel like I'm forcing myself to train now, and that's why I retired. Because my new excitement is this path
Mhm.
I'm alluding to of going deeper within, releasing the stuff that's in the way, and accessing more potential of myself, more life force, more capacity, and coaching people in that. That's what I coach people in is conscious leaders, entrepreneurs, and how they can release and integrate and transmute all their stuff into their highest potential. Because when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a leader, when you're someone like you and I who wants to ascend and get to that next level, it's not strategy that we need. Strategy is the 10% or whatever, 5%.
Yeah.
95% of it is you in your subconscious blocks, whatever you want to label it, because that's what they are. They are blocks, but they're not. There's suppressed energy inside of you that needs to be met and seen and integrated for you to expand. The reason, we get stuck and don't send that email or make that call or take that action and we do busy work instead is because we're afraid, we're avoiding something big because who am I, right? We're in our mind's telling us you're not that big, like you don't know what you're doing, you're kind of an imposter. People will find out, people will judge you because you're living in your mind, you're living in your head, you're seeing everything through that. But if you release all this suppressed energy, emotion, process it, wash over you, you expand. Meaning, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I know why I would been so manipulative to people and I wasn't selling. I see why the actual root, why I've been ashamed of certain things about myself. And you can make choices from that clarity, choices to your higher path, because you have more capacity, more life force voltage to make those decisions instead of trying to suppress it because it's so intense. Because it is intense. It's intense to think about going on stage for some people. It's intense for taking that action. Why? It's because you can't handle that energy inside of you.
Hey, this is Hunter from the Everything's Connected podcast. Are you feeling drained? If you're searching for ways to manage stress and find a little more peace, the Podcast Connection Network is here for you. We've got amazing shows on mental health, mindfulness, and all kinds of ways to live a happier, healthier life. Check out the link in the episode's description.
Right? So you avoid it. But if you expand your capacity by accessing all this suppressed energy inside of you, you naturally expand and you take the actions, you access your potential, your gifts emerge. You start sharing, like you're listening to me. I'm like, I'm sharing everything. I wouldn't have done this years ago. I would have been so ashamed to talk about anxiety and panic. I would have only wanted to talk about the good stuff and the championships, right?
Right.
But I don't care anymore because it literally doesn't bother me what people think because I've done that. I've released the stuff that bothered me. You know what I mean? And I help people do that. They transmute it. An example of this, just a very simple example. A client just very recently was bothered every time he got, people have this problem. Entrepreneurs, we get on Facebook or social media because of our business, but we waste hours or whatever on it, scrolling, and it's so frustrating. Or we see things that frustrate us. Well, he would get on social media and get frustrated at his competitors. Like he would just have this anger about him, right? And teaching him how to feel that, release it, and as it's happening, he transmuted that without even like realizing it. The next couple of days, he was messaging me like, "John, I'm just like posting like crazy now because every time I get on, it doesn't bother me, and I'm transmuting that energy and putting his stuff out there like that." He didn't tell himself stop being angry at these people. He didn't tell himself anything mentally because he knows that. We all know that intellectually. Don't let people bother you. Don't care what people think. But you can't change yourself by just telling yourself your mind that. You have to feel the inner resistance that's preventing you from putting stuff out there, that making you unsafe. And so when you start transmuting this stuff, you step into your higher potential naturally without needing motivation and crutches and other people to push you.
Have you ever worked and assisted anyone that had like addiction problems? And
Oh yeah.
did any of this work?
Oh my God. I mean, to be honest, everyone has addiction.
Fair enough.
My addiction was again productivity and achievement, and people think that's not addiction. It is.
It is.
It's my ego is addicted to getting all these things and all like working 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. or whatever. And if you get to the end of the day after day, and you're not satisfied, you're addicted to that feeling of success, that feeling of money, that feeling of progress. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's an addiction. It means you're not okay on the inside and you need something to make you feel better. And so everyone's addicted to something. But I've helped people through suicide. Like this transmutes anything, depression, suicidal thoughts. And I don't do it. They do it. You have to be willing. Like you see how intense this can be. But I've had clients message me later that they were suicidal when they met me and they start working with me. They didn't share that initially, but doing this work, I just had a client, she had been depressed for 6 years. And she told me she had never had 3 days in a row in those 6 years where she felt good. Like 3 days in a row. There was never a 3-day streak in those 6 years. She said the first week she started working with me, it actually got worse. And she said, "John, I doubled down that night. I rewatched your module on how to unhook." Because like I said, this is hard because your mind gets in the way. And she listened to it and she did it. And on her own, not with me coaching her or telling her anything, she processed something out that she was attached to for 6 years that she didn't even realize. And she let it go. She processed it out. Every day since that moment, she's felt good. Like I'm talking months. This was months ago. This was, what are we? We're in June.
Yeah.
9 months ago. And so she still messages me. So like, this is profound because all the stuff that's holding us back is inside of us. We are the ones holding on to all the stuff in our way. No one else is. And when we learn how to process that, integrate that, transmute that, we can become more powerful.
I had made an outline, of course,
And
but
it didn't go to plan. Yeah.
no, which is fine. I like the conversation to go wherever it needs to go. We
Mm-hmm.
talked a little bit about the chaos method. What is that, and what was it like to perform in front of 400 million people? The anxiety, how do you release it? How do you face that? How did you come to terms with it? And how do you process it now, kind of looking back?
Well, like I said, the very first competition I did at the World Championships, I felt that immense pressure. And I realized I have to figure out how to navigate that, because that's the demon. Not, I know how to memorize, but the pressure was the challenge. And so I started learning people where other competitors were like training in Starbucks to like have people walking around in noise or whatever. There's a Ron White as a 2-time champion. He trains with decks of cards underwater, like he holds his breaths, and it, like adds to pressure. So I took it to the next level, and I call it chaos training, where the training is harder than the battle, right? I would, instead of training in silence and comfort, I would hold my breath, do 20 push-ups. I would have to pee, like I would chug a bunch of water. I feel like I have to pee. I would put headphones on my ear, listening to a podcast I wanted to listen to, full blast. And then I would get on the table and start memorizing. So my heart's racing. I got to pee. I'm listening to a podcast, really interesting. I got to focus on memorizing. My mind, the voice in my head, my ego is like, dude, this sucks. Like, why are you doing this? You're going to do terrible. The score is going to be awful. This is pointless. And I'm training through all of that. Now, here's the thing. I didn't realize this till years later. Obviously, it makes sense to make the conditions hard. And it helped. That was my secret for winning. Like, it made the training easier, the competition easier. But what I did intuitively, and I didn't realize this, was I didn't resist it. So everyone's telling you, block out your distractions. And I'm saying that's BS.
Absorb them?
Yeah. Like inner distractions.
Okay.
Voice in your head, like all the distractions I went through, it's easy to like try to push them away, block them out to focus. Let them wash over you. Let them be a part of it. So talking about performing in front of 400 million people, there's a show called Superbrain in China that 400 million people watch. Like I was on this earlier this year. Not only was I in front of 400 million people, but what I had to do was I went up against China's best. He's a former Guinness World Record holder. We each had 100 items shown to us, like a Rubik's Cube and a picture, like props from the show. 2 items at a time were given to us, and there were 100 of them. And each item was placed in a different locker. So there's 100 lockers in front of us, labeled 1 to 100. Random locker, boom, put this one in, door shut. We had to memorize what item went in what locker number. Okay, that's the easy part. But now, each locker is shut and locked with a 4-digit code. The judge just types in a random 4-digit code from their hand, locks all 100 lockers. So I have to memorize all 100 locker combinations too, in front of 400 million people. And I'm on a stage, it's 90 degrees. Well, it feels like 90 degrees because I'm in a suit, the lights are on me, and I'm standing there for however long this thing's taking place. I feel the adrenaline, my heart racing, the dry mouth, the noise of the crowd, the noise of the cameraman stepping around, the judges murmuring in Chinese because I don't understand Chinese, like all this stuff. And I'm letting it happen. And I'm just bringing my attention back to my training. But instead of like tensing up and like resisting all of it, which would amplify all of that, I've trained myself to let it happen. And that's what not only allows me to succeed under pressure, but also release all the stuff, like not even release, process it out. Let it process. Like, don't block the flow, because everyone wants to be in a flow state. Flow just means non-resistance. So if you don't resist everything, you're going to flow. Of course, you need like a structure to flow with, but if you stop resisting internally stuff, you're going to flow with life. But like I said earlier, anxiety is you're resisting the flow of life, But chaos training taught me to allow this stuff to happen and be with it.
Yeah, coming from a medical background, I'm like, it would be so crazy to have patients come in and the doctor, you go into the visit and they're like, you're just resistant to life. I'm not giving you any Xanax.
Because the mind, or the collective conditioning of the mind, like we're so obsessed with mind, we have to fix everything.
Yeah.
This feeling is bad. It's anxiety. Get rid of it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's awful.
Especially, especially as men, and that is having daughters, and managing a lot of females in the medical field. My biggest thing was stop trying to fix everything. You're a leader, you're a problem solver. It's natural for you to want to fix stuff. Stop. Just listen, hear what's really being said, let it kind of go as you will, let it flow, and see what the real solution is. I lost my train of thought. My memory was going faulty. But yeah, it's not trying to fix everything has been probably one of the biggest challenges, I would say, for me.
For all of us, like men especially, because it's we're living in our head. The mind wants to fix everything. Masculine structure of the mind wants to fix everything, right?
Yeah.
And we're conditioned that way. So like it's not wrong. It's not, you're not a bad person. No one's a bad person for that. But recognize that's your conditioning and that's your path. But yeah, for especially if you're a husband, a father, men out there, we need to be safer emotionally and mentally for women.
That's right.
Like we need to be, because if we're trying to fix everything, like if our wife or our daughter has an outburst of emotion, and if we see that as a burden, like, oh my gosh, here they go again, emotional, right? If we and try to fix that or stop it or walk away from it, it means we can't handle that emotion, that feeling. It means we got stuff to work on, right? And if we keep stopping them or interrupting them or like labeling them as a burden, like internally, they will not feel safe and they will bottle stuff up. And then they will start living in their head and they will start not feeling, they'll feel anxieties and things like that. Right. So if we release all the stuff inside of us, the next, like ideally, wife, daughter comes to you freaking out or whatever, venting. If you can just sit and be with them and hold, that's what hold space means. Like just be where it doesn't bother you, let them let it out, and you're safe for them emotionally. That's what we need. Like for ourselves and for women, that's what will help a relationship thrive and for women to feel safer in society and for themselves and for us. So any men out there listening who can't handle the voltage of someone being emotional, it's because you have stuff inside of you, trapped emotions that's being provoked, that's coming up to the surface, but you can't handle that edge and you're walking away. And I'm not saying you're a bad person, because I was the same way. But here's your challenge to work on yourself and to release the stuff, to be emotionally safer, not just for them, but for you.
Yeah. We talk about it in groups of, where we discuss that of when you want somebody to feel better. If you were to feel bad, I'd be like, I want you to feel better. Well, I want you to feel better because you feeling bad makes me feel bad, and I really want to feel better myself. It has nothing
Yes.
to do with you.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing. But I
Yeah.
remembered my question was, what was your, just because it's such a common route and such a common fix, what was your aversion? Why did you decide maybe not to, did you say you tried medication for the anxiety initially? And then
Yeah.
what made you steer away from that?
Well, they prescribed me Xanax for panic attacks, and immediately that was a horrible idea, because by the time you take Xanax and it sets in, it's like 40 minutes later, and the panic
Right.
attack will be like either going down or whatever. It's like it's pointless, and it only numbs you. Like
Right.
it, sure, it calms you down, sure it does these things, but it like it's all bottled up still. So I intuitively knew that right away, and I tried it for a couple of days just to like help me manage it at that time, because it was, the voltage was so intense. I needed something to dip my toe in the water to handle this stuff, but it wasn't. Clearly, I've always hated pharmaceutical approaches. Like I get they're important for certain arenas, but for me to take stuff every day, no. I just knew
Yeah.
it wasn't that. Yeah.
It's been a journey for me to not, because I grew up with asthma, and in the
mm,
late 70s, early 80s, the treatment was daily medication. So, I grew up as a young child taking daily prednisone, theophylline, and different medications. So it was always kind of a thing. And then I noticed, especially once I got into healthcare and I had health insurance, then all of a sudden you have it. Now you're going to the doctor more. Now you're on more medications. I was like, it kind of didn't make sense. And then when I got laid off a couple years ago and lost insurance and this and that, but ultimately through getting healthier and whatnot and going once a year, I've really been cutting from 9 prescriptions to 2. I'm like, yeah,
that's good for
no.
you. That's amazing.
You
Yeah.
know, you just realize like it's not great, but kind of like you said too, like the medicine, yes, there are some medicines that people need and that do good things, but with some, maybe like a Xanax or something, all you're doing is kind of short circuiting or attempting to wrongly hack your natural system and what should be to happen naturally so you could come out on the other end kind of like yourself, and that letting it wash over you and letting it flow through you and coming out in a better permanent spot
Yeah.
rather than trying this temporary hack that is also offsetting the energy that's already causing the disturbance. you know, or well, not necessarily. Maybe it's like a little pressure valve on a slow cooker or something, but it's not really enough, you
Right.
know.
100%. It can help temper because panic attacks are so incredibly intense. Like I liken this, people listening to feel your emotions. Some of them are incredibly intense and we can't handle them right away. That's normal, right? I liken it to imagine an ice cold pool. Like how many of us could just jump in there and sit in that pool? No, it's so painful and so cold. Like we have to start by dipping our toe in the water for 10 seconds, getting out, warming back up, getting our ankle in. Like some of us need that with emotions. And so I walk people through that. How
Mm,
do you do that with the low hanging fruit of life to build up to the big boulders? Because there's big boulders inside of you, like huge from your life that are haunting you, whether you realize it or not. We want to get to those and release those, but we don't. All of us can't immediately go to those right away and handle
right.
that voltage, right? We might need a Xanax. We might need a something to help. That's okay. But ultimately, I was like, I don't want to rely on any of that stuff. I want to go to the root, release it, be done with it forever.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like there's some tools you try and some tools work and some tools don't, but at some point, like a house, you would want to put the tools down and hopefully the house stands on its own and every once in a while just needs some maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you just break out your tools when you need that maintenance. But what have you learned in this process, this journey? What's kind of an overarching theme that maybe something you learned about yourself and something you learned about in general that the world needs to hear or know?
I mean, what comes to me is that this world isn't what it seems. We are in this matrix of mind, and we believe the way to succeed in life. And I'm not going to preach here. This is not a preaching thing of right or wrong. What you're doing is wrong. It's a perspective. Like, I need trophies and money and the house and the family and the car and whatever to be happy. Like, that's success to me. And I realize it's not. That's a 3D, that's a worldly success. But
Right.
I realize there's a bigger picture here. There's a much bigger things happening right now that people aren't aware of. Like when you step outside of the matrix of the mind and you live through your heart, and I'm not perfect by any means. I jump up into my mind all the time and but I live way more through my heart and way more presence. And from the heart, you don't see things as good and bad, right and wrong, peace and chaos. You see everything for what it is. And you feel a connection to everything, like because everything is connected. We're all one entity. So here's a mind-blowing thing. Take it or leave it. We are, this is what I believe, that our soul is in a VR headset, if you will. We drop down into this world. We put on a VR headset, and this is the virtual reality, right? Why would our soul want to come here? Does our soul want money? Does our soul want that trophy? Does our soul want? No. I mean, that's cool and all. Like it's like a dream. Like play with your dream, have fun, like express yourself. But ultimately, your soul wants to learn some really powerful lessons to grow. Those lessons come in the form of panic attacks and anxiety. For me, that was one of my huge soul lessons. Is I believe that I was predestined to have those experiences. That I came into my life and my family and their patterns to learn to like go in my mind, have anxiety, to learn how to transcend it so my soul could experience the depths of pain and also the depths of pleasure on the other side. And so I view the world through a mirror, meaning everything is me. Like this outer world is just me projected outwards. So if I'm triggered by something or someone, like if I don't like you, Richard, or I start judging you for whatever reason, it means I judge a part of myself. Like if I judge you for liking Star Wars, and I don't know if you like Star Wars, right? But like if I judge you for being nerdy in Star Wars, like in my mind, it's mean I'm judging a part of me that I pushed away. I judge myself for the nerdiness that I've trapped and pushed away. Like if I judge someone for being overweight and ugly, like in my mind, right? It's because I also judge myself for my appearance and my so like the world, the VR headset, the mirror is always showing me parts of me that I haven't seen before that I can embrace, release, and integrate so I can expand. So the world's always showing me what bothers me, what I'm judging, what's causing conflict, because it's showing me, it's giving my soul what it needs to grow. But we resist it as humans because we're living in this 3D concept of success, when in fact, no, there's a bigger picture. Your soul is here to learn grander lessons from the heart. And those grander lessons help you like far superior, more than your mind can ever manifest.
No, well, because and it makes so much sense. I mean, because like to me, I would go, if I'm leading with my soul and my heart, I spent 12 years in healthcare because I love to help people, be it the patients or the team members taking care of people as a leader. Um, the fact that I got laid off, had to reevaluate, the core of my heart never changed. I still want to help people. I still love the world. I still love people. Um, and want to help them get better. And a podcast and having people on such as yourself is just a way, but it's actually a way to reach more people. It's actually grander, and it took me a long time to realize all the skills I had developed in that healthcare job, all the interviews I did trying to hire people was actually beneficial for me to be a podcaster
Yeah.
and working with systems and the work effort I had to exert to switch jobs and while going to graduate school with a 1-year-old.
That's beautiful.
All those things taught me a lot, and it's coming to realization much later.
Mhm.
And I still get kind of stuck in my head as well. And, I
We all
always say that I'm the only one, anytime I feel internal conflict, I'm fighting with myself.
Yeah.
All the problems I seem to have seem to be I'm fighting with myself. Like, for instance, sometimes I got off medications, but I will take a THC edible to sleep. But then I kind of don't want to. And then I struggle with that. Like,
Mhm.
well, I'm not going to sleep.
Mhm.
Why do I not want to take it?
Mhm.
Why do I want to take it? Well, I want to sleep, you know? And last night I didn't want to, but I couldn't even tell you why. I just have something in me that says, no, I don't want to have to take it.
Yeah, your soul is gently, carefully, patient with you. But yeah, you're
But
exactly
it's
right.
still that struggle. And like
You're judging a part of yourself. Yeah.
I didn't take it last night. And, I took Ollie sleep gummies instead, and they kind of worked a little bit. But, it's still that whole thing of this conflict of going like, I don't see anything wrong with THC edibles, but why don't I want to take them, even
Mhm.
if they work?
Yep. And that's the mind speaking. The mind there's convincing you and there isn't anything wrong with them, by the way, but your mind
Right.
will convince you to stay comfortable, and your soul's like, I'm gonna be patient with you. And I know this is the higher path, right? But it's like a loving parent. You see your child overcoming something and you're patient with them because you understand they need to learn on their own. But you're exactly right. A conflict inside of you in that example is we're resisting a part of us. We're judging a part of us that's bad. Like maybe you're judging this part of you that wants to take the edibles as bad because society has said don't do those things, right?
But
There's a
he's not,
conflict.
but he's the best version of me sometimes when I've thought about it because, it was the edibles and whatnot that actually helped me get off alcohol,
Exactly.
helped me get off all the prescriptions.
It's your
You know,
state.
but at the same time too, it's one of these things of going, it took that edge off enough when I couldn't stand to be in my own body. And maybe I'm in this process of becoming more comfortable in my own body and I don't want to take that edge off anymore. I want to maybe feel
You're
myself to the
dipping
fullest.
your toe, you're getting in that pool, right? More and more.
But I
So I
still
hope,
struggle, I still struggle with like,
yeah, but that's the
oh,
process.
I don't want
Remember
to.
to feel that energy that arises and be with it. Because it's uncomfortable and you won't want to do it. I tell my clients all the time, when this stuff comes up, when you're reading an email and you're aggravated or you're going to bed and you feel this edge, you will not want to sit with it. You'll want to get on your phone or because I know from experience, trust me, this is me, right? You won't want to, but it's the greatest thing you can do. And to speak to your soul will always, always guide you to the higher path, always. And be loving and patient with you because it knows you have to learn. well, your soul is you. It's not a separate thing.
Right.
It's waiting for the human part of you to learn, and will always guide you to the higher path. Always.
Hmm.
So that's where you know it's your soul speaking, is versus the mind, right? Is it the higher path? Is it the path of my highest choices?
Yeah. And as I feel like I just discussed this in an interview yesterday, or no, it was when I edited Taking the Higher Path. And, the thing was, is we had discussed becoming the person who is able to take the higher path, developing into that person, because it's not natural and it's not instantaneous. Just because you want to take the higher path doesn't mean you always will or that you're capable yet.
Yeah.
But kind of one of the things I always love to end with is during this journey and this process of everything we've discussed and your kind of journey of learning it, going through it, understanding it, and now utilizing it to help others. What's one unexpected thing that you never would have imagined that's come into your life, that's happened to you? It's just so awesome, so great that you never seen in 1,000 years if you hadn't done this or embarked on this journey or this self-exploration, if you will.
I mean, everything I mentioned comes to mind of accessing a new level of energy I didn't know was possible. Because I always thought energy came from food and
Mm-hmm.
sleep, right? Eat right and exercise. I always thought that was the only way to get energy. But let me lay a scenario on you. Imagine you just had a huge breakup, and maybe some of you guys are going through this. Heart-wrenching breakup, thought she was the one, he was the one, and you're depressed for weeks. Now imagine you're not eating anything, right? Room's a mess. Imagine that person calls you back 2 weeks later and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And by the way, this is Michael Singer's example. And they call you and go, "Oh my gosh, like I missed you. I'm so sorry. I never should have done that. I want you back. I want to be with you. Can I come over right now?" You're going to feel a jolt, a voltage of like energy. You're gonna jump out of your bed. You're gonna go take a shower. You're gonna eat. You're gonna feel pumped. Like you are gonna feel something inside of you explode. That's not energy from food and sleep, because again, you're depressed. You haven't eaten. You don't eat. You're not sleeping well.
Right.
There's a energy, a life force inside of you, right? And that energy is what I try to cultivate more and more, because it's not that I'm trying to add energy. That energy is, imagine an infinite pool inside of you at all times, ready to flow. Like it's trying to flow up through you, but you're blocking it with all this stuff, suppressed emotions and attachments. It's just blocking the energy. The only reason you feel happy when you get ice cream or you win the award is because you're not hitting any blockages. You got everything you wanted. Boom, you felt that energy. But you should feel that energy all the time. And so it's a process of, like you said, becoming the greater version of you and accessing that energy isn't a process of adding stuff to your life. It's a process of releasing it and removing all the stuff that's preventing you from feeling it and being it, because you already have infinite potential inside of you. It's just so blocked, and the conditioning is holding you in, the suppressed emotion is holding it in. It's a process of unveiling. That's how you access this magical, magnetic life force energy.
Deep, deep, deep. Do you have any questions for me before we hop off? I always give everyone a chance to ask whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, what have you seen? What's been your greatest, you asked me this question, this greatest blessing that you've seen in your life? What's that for you in your journey?
So much.
Yeah.
The people one, the listeners, the people I get to interview, the conversations. I'm a people person. I love understanding others. I love education, discussion, and because I think we're all more similar than we are different, and we tend to fight over differences as opposed to come together over commonality. So that's been great, but probably one of the biggest things, my layoff and starting this journey has really been, I think I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better son, and I get to be the version of that that I want because I had this weird American conditioned idea that, oh, I did this, I was in management, I was a practice manager, I would naturally move up to director, and then I would be a VP maybe by the time my 10-year-old was in college. And, I could be on the precipice of retirement or have enough freedom to where if she wants to go to college somewhere, I can visit her or I can move there and work remote. And
Mhm.
I thought that was it.
Mhm.
And, you know, the thing is actually getting laid off was the best thing for me. It just took me a long time to understand that and to realize that. And I had to sit with all that negativity. And, one of the things, I think I mentioned this in another episode, but it was kind of like going through a breakup. Like I had to forgive them and say, hey, why am I mad at them? They gave me 6 years. They taught me how to run multi-million-dollar businesses. I met all these people. I got all these skills. I should be thankful. And then I had even mentioned, you know what? I was in an interview or journaling the other day after an interview, and I said, it just now came to me, and it's been 4 years. Why didn't I make director? Because if I had made director, I would have gone up in salary. I would have been more comfortable. That layoff would have been more devastating. I might have gone back into healthcare because it was more comfortable. I might have pursued that 6 figures instead of going, oh, I was only making, you know, 65,000 a year and I can do a bunch of different things for 65,000. And, understanding that because there was a period of 3 years where I applied for a bunch of healthcare jobs again and had some interviews, turned a few down. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to relocate because my daughter's in an art school and I'm not taking her out of it because I love that for her. And so to feel, to understand that I'm doing all this and that I get to go to field days, I get to take my daughter to school, I get to pick her up. My wife she is kind of in the entrepreneurial space as well. And we have freedoms. I mean, there's times we have to put the foot on the gas and work a little more if we want a vacation or something. But there's, I'm not doing payroll at Disney. I'm not taking 2 a.m. phone calls because the housekeeper opened the wrong door between the gym and the clinic. And, I can even remember when I started the podcast and my daughter was like, I was reapplying to the company that actually laid me off for a similar position. And she goes, Daddy, do you really want 2 a.m. phone calls again? Why don't you just start a podcast? I
Mhm.
applied for the job just to prove like I'm not afraid to ask my pride. I guess you could say like I'm dropping my pride and my ego enough to apply back to the place that laid me off that I thought I would never have anything to do with again because I was so bitter and angry.
Mhm.
Um, but they declined and I started the podcast and it's kind of been in small increments, but I would say between January and June and probably even just April and June, there's been exponential growth, both whether it be in the quality, my skills, the guests. I mean, it's just been, I feel it's in the right direction, and I feel like as long as you're going in the right direction, the speed is less important. And it feels like it's happening so slow but so fast all at once. Um,
Our mind wants it to go faster and be where we want it to be, but yeah, like you said, you didn't think you'd be fired, but it was one of the greatest things because it put you on a different path. Almost like
and
it was meant to be. I think
yes,
things was like it was your soul nudging you into a different path because you'd learned everything you needed to learn. You were ready to go through a anger, bitter, resentment like phase to transmute
hmm
that, and that's where you're at, and that's beautiful.
yeah. And this is the thing I love to do. I mean, I was up at 4:30 this morning. Prior to this interview, I was editing. I like to get up. I like to edit. I like to do this. I've sat on a Sunday and edited 2 videos and spent 11 hours in front of the computer, and it didn't bother me one bit. And it was great. But then I also, because I do enjoy it, I've been very conscious to, especially since joining Podmatch, to set it up in a manner of I allow myself 36 hours a week for these certain things, research, editing, this and that, the other. And now that my daughter's out of school, I break every day between certain hours, whether it's 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. so we can go to the pool and do stuff and or spend time with my wife. So I'm getting better at like taking the breaks, but I can always say like hey, I could be watching Survivor with my wife, and if I got this exciting interview, I'm sitting there thinking of the questions I want to ask the person, even though I'm watching TV.
Yeah, yeah.
So I know I love it.
Mhm.
And when I get up and I leave this conversation and I feel energized, um, that too gives me that, like I got the chicken skin now. And when I get to edit something and you revisit a great conversation and you pick out these little nuggets, and I'm like, oh yeah, even editing, which is the most tedious part, can kind of become enjoyable, and I try to enjoy it. And so for now, I feel this is what's right for me, and it's trucking along, and I absolutely love it. And it's been the biggest blessing, and I'll continue to do it as long as, this is where energy and life points me. And
Right.
I always say that, if there's something else I'm supposed to be doing, if it's a book I need to be writing with it, or something I need to be selling along with it, or a coaching service, because I say, hey, I don't coach, I don't do anything. I'm selling myself. You know who I am. So if you want me for something, you know what you're going to get, because I'm going to do the right thing. I'm a person of integrity. And if you go back and listen to my episodes, there's examples of that. But whenever it comes time for me to take the next step, the teacher will appear, and I'll know that, hey, it's time for me to move in this direction or add something to the podcast, or, whatever it is. I just kind of trust. And, for now I go, I'm at close to 50 episodes. I'm work on reaching 100 and just keep enjoying it and keep the foot on the gas until I get a sense of something else. And I don't try to pressure myself. I just say, I'll know when it's time. You'll know. Something will let you know. If
Yeah, you
you're
get those little
intuitive.
moments where you can't get it out of your mind, or where you come across someone or hear something and your mind can go, no, I can figure it out on my own. But your higher self, your soul, will always say, take that opportunity, take that leap, follow that person, follow that thing, because you know it will take you higher. So I love that.
Yeah, it was my dad and my daughter who both were like, why don't you just start a podcast? Okay. So end of July will be 1 year.
Wow, that's
And
congrats.
yeah, thank you. It's been great. And um thanks for coming on this morning. I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a
Yeah,
lot, and
I did too.
I look forward to editing it and getting it out to everyone. And I'll drop you an email with the release date and link and everything. Okay.
Cool. Appreciate
All
you,
right.
Richard. Thank you for
Well,
everything. It was
all right,
awesome.
man. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, we'll see you.
All right, bye. Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from. Remember, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Let's go.